Huge, big, old TWIRx today. We are TWIRxing big time. We got a lawyer that's also a pharmacist, Dr. Dae Lee, talking with Johny Kello. We're going to be digging into the TrumpRx Playbook for independent pharmacies. We're also going to be talking about gene and cell therapy. I'm sorry, I always say it backwards. Cell and gene therapy with Joe DePinto. Joe's back. Joe is such a great resource. Thank you so much for being on TWIRx this week. We have a special message from Katrina Azur. Dr. Jessica Dae Lee will be here talking with us and digging into ways to mitigate drugs that you can't access in 2026. And a special message from my friend Greg Reibold. He's a champion for PBM reform. He's a lawyer and advocate working for APCI who supports the PBM reform podcast. All this and more coming up on TWIRx. Hope your week's been good. Hope you guys are ready for Christmas. I am not sure if I'm ready yet. Still, it's out for debate. Today is December 19th, 2025. Can you believe it? This year has gone by record fast. We have a lot going on in our pharmacy industry. You're in it. And we are excited about what's happening in our industry. TWIRx News, we're going to start right out the gate with an article from Pharmacy Times, who does an absolute amazing job at reporting I always call them the great-grandfather of pharmacy publishing. They have an article that came out, OTC Case Study, Supplements for Aging, comes in at number one, case one, vitamin D. Goes through the case, read through this, gives kind of an answer overall based on the case for people that are seniors. We have a podcast all about aging from Dr. Tamara Rugels. A shout out to her. Case one, vitamin D. Case two, calcium. Case three, melatonin. I'm going to definitely read up on that one. Case four, a multivitamin. It gives some really good references. Shout out you guys at Pharmacy Times. You guys are the best at what you do. Thanks for reporting and keeping our pharmacists up to date. But even if you have family members, older family members, I'm going to send this article to my father and my mom. They're at that age that we really want to pay attention to the best of the OTCs out there. All right, good news coming out of Arkansas. They're in a war right now. The title of this article from KTLO.com, it says Arkansas law targeting pharmacy benefit managers blocked as legal fight continues. And this is just a bunch of crap of the fight that they're putting up. But basically it says, hey, if you own a PBM, you should not own a pharmacy. And I absolutely agree with that. PBMs, Express Scripts, CVS, and OptumRx that has all the money in the world to throw at fines. They don't care about the fines. They don't care about what's best for America or healthcare. It says along with their national trade group, they've sued the state claiming that the law interferes with interstate commerce and would disrupt prescription drug access. A federal judge has temporarily blocked the law from taking effect January 1st through Arkansas. It has appealed the ruling to the 8th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. So the fight is still in place, but goodness gracious, why is that not a conflict of interest for insurance companies not allowed to own distribution of medications through pharmacies? It's like a no duh to me. Also, from Healthcare Finance reporting just today, OptumRx expands pharmacy payment model. It says all community and independent pharmacies in the OptumRx network are transitioning to cost-based contracts. This was forced on them. And don't let anybody fool you. They did not make this up themselves. There are too many things happening. OptumRx sees the future. They see that they're going to be knocked out of the position that they were in based on PBM reform. And they're racing ahead, trying to come up with something they're calling cost-based pharmacy reimbursement by partnering with 3 additional pharmacy service administrator organizations representing more than 17,000 community pharmacies, with an additional 100% of community and independent pharmacies in the OptumRx network. They've transitioned to the new predictable pricing model using cost-based contracts. And OptumRx seeks full implementation by January 2028. And by then, they'll come up with a new scheme. I don't trust it. I think they'll probably get away with paying our independent community pharmacies and pharmacies in general. It's very upsetting, but nonetheless, we're going to fight. We're going to continue to partner with organizations that are trying to save our local independent community pharmacies, our chain pharmacies. Walgreens has suffered from this debacle. They've been closing stores. We see a lot going on, but just wanted to give you those 3 quick hits. We do have special features today, and our first one comes from MatchRx, and it's a good interview. You do not want to miss this interview with Dae Lee and Johny Kello. And before that, we have a quick message from our sponsor, MatchRx.
Running a pharmacy means juggling a lot. Patient care, inventory, and now compliance. That's where MatchRx comes in. MatchRx is an online marketplace where independent pharmacies buy and sell their overstock safely, quickly, and affordably. You can also shop from 11 plus trusted secondary wholesalers, all in one place. We're here to make pharmacy ownership easier, connecting you to savings, trusted partners, and simple tools that help you stay compliant with confidence. MatchRx, where pharmacy meets trust, compliance, and opportunity. Visit MatchRx.com to learn more. That's MatchRx.com.
Hey, this is Johny Kello with MatchRx, and you're listening to This Week in Pharmacy.
Welcome back to This Week in Pharmacy. I have a special guest back. We're going to have to start tracking who's the most Twitter, listen to me, Twitter, TWIRx guests. It's Joe DePinto's back on TWIRx. How are you, Joe?
I'm great, Todd. Thanks for having me back.
It's nice to have you back. And you're my go-to for updates on the very mysterious, in some ways, world of cell and gene therapy and what that means for the future of the pharmacy industry and also pharmacists. We just heard from Dr. Mark Garofoli, who's one of our podcasters. He works down at WVU School of Pharmacy as a professor, and he commands the whole space of pain management. The Board of Specialties is now making pain management a specific specialty. And I see in the future pharmacogenomics becoming a specialty. And I also see cell and gene therapy becoming a center where we have pharmacists who are really dialed into this. And that's why I'm glad to talk to you again and see you and get some updates from you.
Glad to be here. And I agree. I think it's an exciting time in cell and gene therapy, no doubt.
An article that came out just this week in pharmacy came from pharmalive.com, and it basically was reporting where cell and gene therapy sector and the venture funding that was being put into this is significant, and how the cell and gene therapy is now commanding an investment portfolio of about $3.5 billion just in this space. And it really opens my eyes up where you have Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca, Novartis, Bristol, Myers Squibb, Eli Lilly, always moving. They're all driving towards these early stages and strategies around cell and gene therapy. And you were the first person at one of the conferences, I'm not sure if it was Assembia or NASP, Joe, to really help our listeners start dialing into what does this mean for better health care or more options for our physicians to choose for the specific condition, and better, my favorite spot to talk about is how pharmacists are going to become bigger providers and bigger touch points in the realm of cell and gene therapy. So give us kind of like I have some questions specifically for you about the report, but before we get onto the report, give us a state of the nation of where are we at right now?
Yeah, so to your point, the Alliance for Regenerative Medicine recently reported out and looking at the top 20 pharmaceutical companies by market cap, and they really looked at who were engaged in cell and gene therapy, and 15 out of the 20 top market cap companies had either a commercialized product or pipeline products in cell and gene, or just cell or gene. So you're seeing the big players putting a lot of effort, dollars into the space. The science is unbelievable, right? And we continue to learn more about cells and how they work in the microenvironment of cells and the human genome and gene therapies. And pharmacists certainly will practice at the top of their license in helping to navigate the complexities of delivery of these products. And it's a great opportunity for pharmacists. It's a great opportunity for the care delivery team as these products go from clinical to commercial, and how we optimize the navigating the value chain so that these products can go to patients and they can have expanded access to these products. So it certainly is an exciting time, and the science continues to evolve nicely.
So I also appreciate the investment and time that you're putting into data and reporting for the market at large. And the 2025 Cell and Gene Therapy Report has come out. And it's really why you are here today for sure for us, is because once again, we kind of wanted to pick a couple of parts of this, but just as an opening, just give us an idea of where the advancement of cell and gene therapy, where that's going, and how's that going to impact patient care.
Yeah, thanks for asking, and thanks for taking a look at the report. We're really excited about it. This is the second year we've done the report. Last year was our inaugural report, and we tried to build off of the momentum from last year. This report has primary research with oncologists as well as with payers. Then we also look at the pipeline and look at how the pipeline is evolving, and it certainly is evolving quite nicely. Then what we do is we bring in thought leaders throughout the United States to talk about practical ways in which they are really tackling some of the access barriers or challenges that are identified in the report. What we've seen is significant progress in certain areas and slower progress in other areas, right? And we'll continue to do this on a yearly fashion to really help our readers understand how to navigate optimally the value chain. Where Inspirogene powered by McKesson sits in the value chain, we have unique assets that are well positioned to help a variety of those barriers be eliminated. And that's our goal, right? Our goal ultimately is to have more patients have commercial access to these products. And we do it with research, we do it with data, and we do it with a targeted, focused approach of eliminating barriers.
So how are you right now engaged with pharmacists at either health systems or specialty or disease state management? And at what point do they get involved after a clinical trial, after, maybe it is during clinical trial, but where do you see pharmacists coming in? Because you know as well as I do, the role of the pharmacist, it's expanding, and now pharmacists are becoming subject matter experts. We have more than 12 of them on our network that are pediatrics, geriatrics, clinical trials. So talk to me about, where does the pharmacist come in, and the pharmacists listening who are like, I'm fascinated by this. At what point should they start engaging the realm of cell and gene?
I think the pharmacist comes in the clinical phase. As these clinical trials get up and running, typically there are treatment teams that work with these clinical trials to make sure that the centers have a selection of the right patient, that the delivery of the product is accurate and consistent with high quality and safety. And I think they play a critical role all the way in the clinical. And as more of these products become approved, those pharmacists will also be involved in the clinical to commercial transition. And actually, in our report, Dr. Navneet Majahal from Sarah Cannon Research Institute talks a little bit about clinical to commercial, some of the challenges and some of how him and the team at Sarah Cannon really approach that. And it is a team effort.
I love it. And I like how the examples are being given in this report. The stories are being shared so that we're getting hard data, which is wonderful. This piece does. But then we get to hear from these clinicians and these providers that are actually out there doing it. And that helps to blend this. That's why I'm glad that you're on a podcast, because if someone's listening, you're driving right now, you're walking, you're doing something, don't worry about this. We're going to have links to accessing this information. There's a main site that you can go to, which is Inspirogene.com, or it might be pronounced Inspirogene.com, but we're going to have that link in the show notes. What else do you want to highlight on this report that really excited you after? Because I'm sure you weren't out there collecting all this data by yourself, Joe, but when you saw it come through, what were you like, holy cow, this is pretty exciting?
So two areas that I think, one very exciting, one a bit of a watch out. So let's talk about the very exciting first. The good news is that as you look at the clinical work, we continue to see year-over-year progress in clinical pipelines, getting towards maturation, more towards clinical to commercial approvals. What we did is we saw two key areas of growth. We saw cell and gene therapy clinical trials expanding in oncology and hematology, and also autoimmune disease. We saw a very large growth in both those areas as products continue to evolve to late stage therapies. Now, late stage for cell and gene is typically phase 2 and phase 3. Some of these products get approved with phase 2 data, and oncology, hematology being a big component, but autoimmune made a significant increase this year. When you look at these subcategories and you break them out and you look at the autoimmune subcategory, we started to see quite a bit of movement there, and that's highlighted in the report as well.
Love it.
That's the good news. One of the challenge that we saw, one of the, I guess, a bit of a slight disappointment to me is we've continued to see cell and gene therapy commercially be given at these large academic centers. And in the report, for the second year in a row, we have a map by geographic metropolitan area where these products are delivered. We believe at Inspirogene that the best care is local care. Patients need to be treated locally. They don't need to travel for an extended period of time. And we were disappointed to see the year-over-year growth in sites. We didn't see as many sites, so we still believe that there are, based on this map and the extensive work we've done in looking at this geographic metropolitan area, treatment deserts that exist. And we know that when a patient has to travel greater than 2 hours, they typically opt out and choose another alternative treatment. And we want to make sure that treatment is available locally because we believe that's the best treatment that can be done. And we believe that the market will continue to evolve with community migration. Look, these academic centers are great, but they're doing clinical trials, they're doing commercial patients, and there's a capacity issue at these places. And the fact that travel is a challenge as well for not only the patient, but the caregiver for an extended period of time is a challenge. So that was one of the takeaways that I was a bit disappointed that we didn't have more migration to community sites, but I know that there's a focused effort to make sure that more sites get up and running and deliver these groundbreaking therapeutic interventions locally.
Joe, this map just screams to me that there's such opportunity to become a subject matter expert in a community around cell and gene and educating other providers, educating the community, educating sites that you'd like to open up a collection of data for clinical trials or whatever there might be. But this is excellent data. Our shout out to our listeners. If you're interested in this, once again, it's Inspirogene.com. Like I said, it's going to be in our show notes. And then thinking about the future, thinking about 2026. First of all, Joe, are you going to Assembia 2026?
Always, never miss it. Never miss it. I'll always be there.
We're gonna get you on the show. We're gonna get an update from you there. Bring us a couple friends of yours or colleagues of yours. If they're pharmacists, you get a bonus prize. and, but when I'm thinking of the meetups, are we doing any kind of education specifically to pharmacists in each of these disease state categories where you can really drill down into specifics? And are some of those things aligned with either CE or at least just general education?
I think a lot of the manufacturer, the biopharma companies are doing more and more disease area expertise, training, education as they prepare for cell and gene therapy to enter new areas like lupus, myasthenia gravis, which are different than the typical hematology patients that get cell and gene therapy. So I think there are a lot of activity there from a disease area. And look, as these products go to new specialties, there's going to need to be more and more of that activity being done. I think we'll start to see more and more of that evolve in the year ahead. And I hope as well to see some of that activity at Asembia. They've always been really open to having a cell and gene therapy track that I've been fortunate enough to be engaged with. So look, it's a great opportunity for all of us in the pharmacy area that to meet like-minded people and discuss some of the opportunities and challenges ahead in the year. And I would imagine much of the same will happen in 2026 in Las Vegas.
Hey, Joe, just out of curiosity, this is something I just thought of as you were talking. One of the roles that we see pharmacists being sought after is the medical science liaison, especially if they have experience in a specific condition, blood disorder, or pediatrics, or whatever it is. So is it the MSL that will go to the physicians and kind of educate them to the new options that cell and gene therapy in each of these categories, what options are coming out? Like, who's the individual that is reaching out to these physicians?
Yeah, a lot of the pre-commercial work is done by MSLs, and I'm not surprised that a lot of these MSLs are pharmacists, right? The clinical complexity here is high, and the ability to synthesize the complex to the simple and to clearly explain it fits well with the background of the pharmacist, the Pharm.D. And I believe that I'm not surprised at all. And actually, if you think about some of the data we've seen, about 80+% of the emerging biotechs, 80+% of the pipeline sits in these emerging biotechs. So they're going to need personnel like MSL. So it doesn't surprise me that that's an opportunity for someone to go into industry. It all matters what you want to do with your career, but I'm not shocked that the MSL's position is a destination that many pharmacists want to go to.
Yeah, if you go on LinkedIn and you go onto their career section, just the keyword cell and gene therapy, and then you do a cross-reference pharmacist, there's 24 positions that are just listed just this month of medical science liaisons that are attached to that. So absolutely a shout out to our pharmacists that are thinking of making a career change. Reach out to PPN, reach out to Pharmacy Podcast Network. I'll connect you into some of these leads that we've developed. And then if you're interested in cell and gene specifically, please look at this report. Once again, it's going to be in the show notes. Reach out to Joe DePinto on LinkedIn. He's active on LinkedIn. Connect with him, ask questions. And if you're going to Asembia, if you're going to some of these conferences, reach out and see if you can't schedule some time with Joe. And you're such a resource, Joe. Your time is so valuable, and you've given us a lot of your time through TWIRx. We love having you here as an update. And Merry Christmas, by the way. And I mean, we're on I think one more week, or how many more days till Christmas? It's Friday. I was like less than 14, so we got
home stretch. All
right. So last question. You're not a Steelers fan, are you?
No, I am not.
All right. So what dog is in the fight in the football world right now, since we're entering almost playoffs?
Oh, wow. Having come off of the American Society of Hematology this weekend, I didn't watch much football, but certainly the Colts' chances with Daniel Jones going down really got hurt.
Yeah.
I liked what they were doing until he got hurt. So it'll be interesting to see. There's always one dog that sneaks in, and then they're dangerous in the playoffs.
It's so true. It is so true. I'm still excited about the Steelers just barely, staying in first place last week. So we'll see what happens this weekend. Hey, pharmacists, take a look. Inspirogene.com. You see it on your screen right now if you're watching us live on LinkedIn or Twitter, or if you're watching us on YouTube. But if you want to listen to the podcast, this podcast is available as all TWIRx episodes on any of your favorite platforms, Apple, Spotify, any podcast directory. Joe, promise me we're going to do at least one more TWIRx before Assembia, and then I'll make sure that we schedule with your people to get you on the Assembia show.
Sounds good. Always enjoy being with you. Good luck to your Steelers, and have a great holiday.
All right, Joe. We'll see you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
As frontline healthcare providers, pharmacists like you understand the importance of personalized care, especially in acute pain management. Ural Pharma is dedicated to providing high-quality, generic products tailored to meet your patient's needs. The company aims to serve a diverse range of patient populations, including athletes recovering from intense training, weekend warriors managing minor injuries, and those seeking a practical and mess-free option for acute pain management. Keep Ural in your toolbox of pain management options and join the ranks of pharmacists leading the way in personalized care. To learn more about Ural Pharma and its products, including full prescribing information, boxed warnings, and important safety information, visit uralpharma.com. That's YARAL pharma.com, and connect with them on LinkedIn.
That's right. This is a special episode of This Week in Pharmacy. And, we get such great guests and people that are driving content, people that are driving expertise. I'm very lucky to be able to rely on experts that can bring us information to present demystifying of certain issues. I really appreciated the update on DSCSA from Johny Kello from the MatchRx team. I'm welcoming back to TWIRx for our second part of this deep dive, demystifying series, Johny Kello.
Hey, Todd, how you doing?
Good. Welcome back to TWIRx.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me again. This is awesome.
Yeah, and you've been such a good resource for us because you really helped to set the stage with Elisa Bernstein. Dr. Bernstein dug down into DSCSA, really helped to refine. We've received a ton of downloads on that podcast. The podcast is doing really well. If you haven't listened to it, please go to part 1, and it'll be in the show notes. But today we're going to demystify TrumpRx and the federal to direct consumer cash pay portal. It's expected to launch in 2026, tied to the most favored nation pricing and routing patients to participating manufacturers and direct-to-consumer purchase programs that are often outside of insurance and PBMs. And guess what? Water runs downhill. It's the force of the economy. It's the force of entrepreneurs that are going to get out of the way of things that are keeping them from being prosperous and profitable. And that means better healthcare for our communities that have these independent community pharmacies in them that are having to do jujitsu just to stay open. But give us just a little bit of background on this before we welcome our special guest.
We're surprised with like everybody else was with regards to the TrumpRx announcement back a couple months back. And what we're doing here is just to bring on an expert like Dae to help us walk through it. Because frankly, I think everybody's kind of scratching their head, including myself, saying, well, how is this going to affect us? How does this affect independent pharmacy? And where could independent pharmacy take advantage of it where it's possible? So again, I'm learning on this podcast like you are. I've got a few questions myself, And I'm excited because Dae Lee over at Buchanan, who's a law firm out of New Jersey, has been in pharma. He's a pharmacist himself, and he's been involved on many, many PBM matters, auditing, and just helping pharmacies in general. So excited to have him on here. And again, this is a learning process for me. So without further ado, let's bring Dae in. Hey, Dae.
Todd. Hey, Johnny.
Hey, Dae. Thanks for making it.
Welcome, Dae.
Thanks for having me today.
Welcome. It's good to see you. I've always liked talking to you at the pharmacy conferences, and you've always brought a lot of good information to our listeners. So thanks again for being part of the Pharmacy Podcast Network and being our guest on TWIRx today. I'm not going to make you TWIRx, by the way, but if you can't, I can't even do it. Like, I can't get my muscles to even do the way that TWIRxing goes, but I'm not going to make you do that.
Don't make any of us do it, okay, please.
Okay, so let's just jump into this. This is exciting that we get to demystify once again. Just set the stage for us, Dae, and just tell us a little bit about yourself and what we're going to be talking about today.
Sure. Again, my name is Dae Lee. I'm a pharmacist-attorney, shareholder at Buchanan Ingersoll Rooney. I represent independent pharmacies as well as employers in their dealings with pharmacy benefit managers, mainly the big three pharmacy benefit managers in the country. TrumpRx is a government run program. Right now it is not open yet. It's going to be launching sometime in 2026. The whole purpose of TrumpRx is to connect the customers, meaning patients, directly with the manufacturers at a lower price. And that is the whole purpose of the TrumpRx, is essentially a direct-to-consumer model, and which is unfortunately has become necessary given given our pharmacy benefit industry and how it is operating right now.
Dae, let me ask you something. What are the risks and the potential benefits to independent pharmacies? What kind of disruptions could they expect to have?
So as with the many direct-to-consumer model, in short DTC model that are out there right now, independent pharmacies are being displaced from the whole supply chain. Usually in a traditional pharmacy setting, patient goes see a doctor, patient receive a prescription, or patient have the prescriber send the prescription directly to the pharmacy of the patient's choosing. And then patient goes to the pharmacy, sign the signature log, pay the copay, and then picks up the medication and take the medication. Now here, there's no independent pharmacies are included in the direct-to-consumer model. The manufacturer directs the prescriptions, or manufacturer directs the patients to see certain prescribers or whatnot. As long as the patient has a prescription, manufacturer directs that prescription to be sent to manufacturer's own network of pharmacies, and then the patient receives the medication via mail or delivery, whichever it is.
So a lot of these independent pharmacies can be blocked out with this direct to manufacturer model. And
Correct.
So where does this, is there like a special type of drug, specialty drugs, high cost branded drugs that are going to be more affected by TrumpRx? Or is this kind of the lowbrow, no money making drugs that independents don't even want to prescribe, but take them on because of, subsequent business with that particular patient?
I think right now, DTC model is, including TrumpRx, are focusing on the highly reimbursable drugs or high cost dollar cost drugs, specialty drugs. But again, I want to make sure that the listeners understand, there's no legal definition of specialty medication. Right. So specialty medication can be just anything that is very expensive. Mm-hmm. So it could be Ozempic, or it could be, GLP-1s such as Ozempic, or it could be cancer drugs, or it could be HIV drugs or immunosuppressant drugs.
So not only is it taking the business away from these independents, it's taking traffic out of their pharmacy. They're just the same then.
Correct. Because once the patient started receiving prescriptions from direct-to-consumer model or any other internet or online pharmacies, then the patient will shift entire set of prescriptions to those pharmacies. And independent is a lost opportunity. Well, I don't want to say lost opportunity. It's going to be a loss in terms of the whole set of prescription for a given patient.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about this in like real practice, right? I'm a patient. I've got 4 prescriptions. 2 of them might be on TrumpRx. The other 2 aren't. How is that going to work? Are they going to continue to go to their pharmacy for the other 2 scripts, or will they just say, yeah, again, I think every patient's going to be different, right? We can't just bunch them all the same, but some pharmacists are going to say, well, I'll get my 2 with my pharmacist, or I'm not going to even bother with TrumpRx. I'm still going to get all of with my independent, as long as my independent can charge me the same cash-based rate. And these are primarily cash customers, or is this also covered in plans as well?
Right now, the TrumpRx model is not specified whether it's going to be only for a cash model or is it going to include the insurance model, but most likely it's going to be straight cash-based model where patients try to buy those highly reimbursable drugs at a lower price, not using their insurance.
I see. Okay, great. So tell us, so where are the opportunities for independence? Because right now, what you've told me is that they're getting like locked out of almost every opportunity as it relates to this TrumpRx model. There's got to be a way for the administration to, consider independent pharmacies, because they talk about saving independent pharmacies all the time. But when you look at this model says we're going to put a little hurt on these guys. So help us out. And, is there a way for the independents to say, that we're losing in one area, but here's how we can gain in another area?
So in the event that TrumpRx decides to include network of independent pharmacies or maintain a network of independent pharmacies, and of course, that's going to be a huge business opportunity for the independent pharmacies, because all of a sudden they will be receiving those medications at a lower price, lower acquisition cost, and then dispense to the patient, and then they'll continue to treat or even gain patient population or a whole set of a new patient population. But on the other hand, if TrumpRx does not include those independent pharmacies, it also creates an opportunity for independent pharmacies to really look at their patient population, drug mix, and then start optimizing their cash-based model. Right now, a lot of pharmacies, or a good number of pharmacies, they already have cash-based model. And then some pharmacies turned into a 100% cash-based model and not dealing with insurance companies or insurance claims. Mm-hmm. So it will create opportunities for independent pharmacies.
Okay. So we hear about this all the time, right? A plan, especially a government-run plan, and you're like, okay, well, we'll believe it when we see it, number one. Number two, we know how long it took for manufacturers, wholesalers, and now independents to get caught up with DSCSA. This whole idea of manufacturers being able to handle this kind of, script inquiry, script submittal, and then being able to dispense it. It sounds good on paper, but in reality or in practice, it sounds like there's some real challenges ahead of them. But I'd love to hear your take on that. If that makes sense, or no, they'll be prepared. They're not everybody's Amazon, and these manufacturers definitely aren't Amazon. So tell us a little bit about what your thoughts are on manufacturers actually being able to execute on this.
I think there will be hurdles. Manufacturers, I don't think they will be 100% equipped to handle the volume. And I'm not sure whether the manufacturer even will be able to meet the demand with their supplies of the medications. Great example is GLP-1 medications out there, right? Ozempic, Mounjaro, Zepbound, Wegovy. some manufacturers, they have direct-to-consumer model involving those, and whether it be cash-based or whether it be insurance company-based, right, insurance claims-based. And these medications are, get dispensed through manufacturer-linked or affiliated pharmacies. Independent, but everybody at the FDA said there's no shortage. But in reality, in practical reality, I think there exists some level of shortage because not all patients can get hold of those branded medications. Whether it be through the manufacturer affiliated pharmacy or whether it be through the independent pharmacy. I spoke with patients, I spoke with pharmacy owners. The shortage exists. And I think for the TrumpRx purposes, I don't think manufacturer will be 100% ready to handle the prescription volume and the logistics.
Yeah, and that's where you would think that this model would wise up to include independent pharmacies so that they become the last mile, so that the
Correct.
script runs through the independent with that benefit of a direct to, I would say, manufacturer to pharmacy model, and that pharmacy dispenses that to the independent. So I know it says DTC, but it really should say DTP, like Detroit direct to pharmacy, and and the benefit goes to the patient, not this, this submittal process by the patient, and then they have to figure out how to do it. I mean, I'm sure people can, but we also know that there's a lot of people who are going to, miss scripts or do something that they shouldn't do in terms of how to order the product. So I could see where the government would want to or should want to bring in the independents because of what we just discussed. And not everything is going to be direct to consumer, meaning not all drugs are going to be there. There's so many small manufacturers in the world that are not going to be a part of this. So
correct.
You would hope that, again, the government wises up and says, oh, this is a little bit different than DTC. It should be more like DTP. And how do the independents get that message out to, DC?
Well, independent pharmacies have been for many years pushing the envelope, right? Trying to protect their profession. Okay. And as we all know, independents have gone through a lot of difficult times, given the lower reimbursement, network access. I could spend a day just, itemizing those difficulties that independent pharmacies are facing nowadays. Regarding the TrumpRx is from on paper and financially, it makes sense, right? Providing highly brand drugs that are medically necessary to patient at a lower price. That makes total sense. However, one thing the TrumpRx does not account for or has not accounted for is the patient interaction, patient consultation, right. Patient care.
Yeah. It feels robotic. I mean,
correct.
Yeah. And that's not medicine. That's
not.
Crossing over prescriptions. I mean, oftentimes I've got it when I'm going to my pharmacist, I'm asking all these other questions. This doesn't offer that opportunity. So where do people go? Chat GPT?
Exactly.
I mean, it doesn't make sense.
Or call the what 1-800 number and then try to get a hold of a pharmacist. There might be a pharmacist, available, but the reason, one of the main reasons that people go to independent pharmacy is the human interaction. Is very important. And you not only get the medical consultation, but you also be able to interact with your caregiver. Caregiver being the pharmacist on the other side of the aisle.
Yep. No, totally agree with that. So let's say a patient bypasses the insurance, purchased directly from TrumpRx, right? How does that impact drug utilization for the plan sponsor? And does that have any effect on that independent to reach their GCR levels and what have you?
Correct. I mean, plan sponsor, like they live and die by the data. And those claims, it's cash paid claims, they're not going to be captured. That claim doesn't even exist in the patient's profile with the plan sponsor. And independents, they lose that claim, and it's going to affect their drug utilization rate and generic to brand rate, well, whichever it is, dispensing rate, whichever it is, it's going to impact the data and the ratio.
Todd, I'll let you dive in as well. I'm sorry, I've been absorbing all of Dae's time.
Heck no, I like listening to both of you. I think it's just fascinating to dig into something that I find extremely unnecessarily complicated, and I don't understand. When I think of PBM reform day, I always draw straight lines. One of the straight lines was, why are there gag clauses on pharmacists back in the day when they signed a insurance contract, a PBM contract? A pharmacist by law was not allowed to tell the patient if they could get the drug less expensive some other way or some other place, in order to make sure that they were continuing the medication, these life-saving medications. That's very confusing, and so that was a straight line for me from an understanding perspective. Another one is, why are we allowing insurance companies to own pharmacies, for PBMs to own pharmacies? That's also a straight line. So when I hear things come out like TrumpRx, and I start listening to what much smarter people than me are giving the interpretation of what that means for the consumer, I scratch my head thinking, why aren't things simpler and more direct than, even this new system, the TrumpRx? So what happens to the patient day, the deductibles and the out-of-pocket maximums and benefit structures? Like, how does that all come into play? And I'm thinking of this from the consumer perspective. Even though I love our independent community pharmacies, I want them to win, because if they win, their communities win. But what about this facet of TrumpRx?
So if a patient receives prescription through TrumpRx and pays cash for that claim, I don't think it's going to count towards deductible or out-of-pocket maximum, because it's not being captured. It's not a captured claim under the insurance plan. You're bypassing all that. So TrumpRx, again, on paper, the intent is great. Providing high-cost medication at a lower cost to the patient. But it is a Band-Aid. It's not a complete fix to our system.
Yeah, it feels like it could be dedicated to one or two drugs that a patient might be taking, but not the whole, a group of drugs that a patient might be taking. So it's hard to cherry pick that. And then the negative effect is what you just brought up. It doesn't count against their deductible. It doesn't count against their copay. And so the donut hole is further and further away because these purchases aren't part of that whole process. Is that fair to say?
Correct. It's not part of it. It's just it's in a different silo.
Yeah, right. So let's go back to independent pharmacies, right? And so if you were advising an independent pharmacist right now, would you recommend, for those that have a cash pay strategy or those who don't, to diversify in some other way? And what does that look like? Because it seems like, cash pay should be a part of everybody's pharmacy at one point or another. And so, how might this affect that? Or what would you advise folks to do as it relates to cash pay model?
For the cash pay model, because those claims are not being captured, right? I would definitely advise the pharmacies to maximize the profit margin through the lower acquisition cost, okay? And keep that cash model strong or improve upon it. And the other thing that I wanted to highlight it for independent pharmacy is they have to look at the reimbursement reconciliation report, pay close attention to it, Okay. And a lot of states, if not all of the states in the country right now, have some sort of a MAC appeal process. Okay. And those maximum allowable costs is, of course, is run by the insurance companies or the PBMs, whatnot, but you can appeal it. And every single claim is, when you aggregate them, it affects your bottom line. So I would definitely pursue that. And if there are other opportunities to partner with, whether it be a cost-based model or maximizing the profit by purchasing from, from other suppliers or even through your company, MatchRx, there are opportunities. I mean, from my point of view, there are, in big picture, two sets of pharmacy owners: the owners who are really business savvy or in the process of becoming business savvy, or the old school business owners who are used to just the reimbursement model.
Yeah, and back in the day, for for as long as up till about maybe 7 or 8 years ago, that model worked. It worked great, right?
Correct.
But when PBMs started, discounting the payback, here's you have to change, and if you haven't changed, you'll see a lot of those pharmacies have gone away, and the ones that have been more progressive, I think, continue to survive, and some of them are thriving. But this cash model should be a part of, I think, everybody's day-to-day business at some point or another.
Yes, I mean, look, maybe a lot of folks say, "Oh, independent pharmacy business is difficult. The number of pharmacies are going down." Yes, that's true. But on a flip side, there are multi-store owners are out there. I know many of them, and some pharmacies are being purchased by private equity backed companies at a very, very high sales price. So in any field, you have to adapt. You just cannot stay complaining about what's going on around the world. You have to act. And some owners are being very proactive and protecting their business.
And that's part of the reason I think, Todd's show, this advice from guys like you is so important, because, a lot of people are kind of just stuck sometimes on, where do I go? What do I do? And it's not about just, TrumpRx or the DSCSA or whatever the newest piece of the puzzle is. It's being prepared for these things. And so this interview for us today, at least, was just to kind of scratch the surface, understand, what the effects are going to be or could be if this actually comes to fruition. I mean, again, they say it's 26, who knows? And even when it does launch, or if it does launch, what kind of effect it'll have immediately for independents. At a minimum, one, be aware of it. Two, understand how you can benefit from it or mitigate the losses from it. And I think that's what we're trying to do here, is to raise awareness to pharmacies to be prepared in anything, whether, like I said, whether it's this TrumpRx piece of it, whether it's the DSCSA. Don't be a laggard on these matters. Just make sure that you're consulting with, whether it's listening to a podcast, talking to your attorney. I mean, Dae is a great resource. He's at Buchanan. I'm not giving you a free pitch, but Dae really is a great source of information, him and his entire team. But there's other attorneys out there that are just as qualified. But the bottom line is be prepared for whatever is coming up, not in a week or a month, but the next 6 months, 12 months, and keep your eye on the on the horizon.
That's a good lead in for a question to just wrap up from your perspective, Dae, and that is, what is the outlook that you have as a legal counsel, as a strategist, as a pharmacist for 2026 and 2027, and how that ties into TrumpRx?
I think it's very bright. It's brighter than, several years ago. Independent pharmacies are adapting. More independent pharmacies are adapting. being prepared, being proactive. Government is looking into the current reimbursement model. That's why they came up with TrumpRx and the other DTC models out there. So I want to say the outlook is bright for independent pharmacies.
Thank you, Dae.
It's been good to have you on, Dae. Johnny, it's been wonderful to talk with you and co-host again with you. You're always bringing, like I said, great guests and great topics that really demystify the business of pharmacy and how important it is to stay up to date. I want to give a shout out to our listeners. There's going to be some links in our show notes. So if you don't have a pencil or you're driving or you're doing something, you can't write this down. Don't worry about it. Just go to any of the podcast players, Spotify, Apple. You can go to MatchRx.com, for example. Ask questions from people that understand what's going on. And if they don't have the answer, if MatchRx's team didn't have the answer that you were looking for, they're going to help you find that answer. They're going to be able to network with you, open up their network, and do exactly that. Same with us at Pharmacy Podcast Network. We have a network of thousands of people that are tied into us as expertise on different facets of the business of pharmacy. Dae, you have to promise that you're going to come back to TWIRx sooner than later and give us additional insights that cross the crossroads of pharmacy and law.
Oh, definitely.
All right. Well, you've been listening to This Week in Pharmacy, today's episode. Thank you to MatchRx for being our sponsor, and Johny Kello and team. Thank you so much for bringing us once again a great episode of TWIRx. Hey, as we kick off This Week in Pharmacy, December 19th, holy smokies, I am not ready. I'm not ready for Christmas. Greg Reibold is here from APCI. He has a special message. That's why we're jumping in This Week in Pharmacy TWIRx right out of the gate with a message from Greg Reibold. How are you, my brother? It's so good to see you.
Todd, so good to see you as well. Appreciate you having me on. I think I was just telling you a few minutes ago, was a big fan of the episode you guys released last week, but just great discussions on the IRA, and implementation, of what's going on in Medicare with pricing, and anyway, it was a great episode.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so that's what this is all about. If you're listening, you think you have something to share about our profession, I mean, this is it. We talk about what's happening this week in pharmacy. It's we're TWIRxing. And so, hey, you and I were part of something pretty special last week on Thursday, the Pharmacists Fight Back Act. It was a convergence of 25, 30 different organizations and state organizations and politicians, and it was an amazing time. Give our TWIRx listeners a rundown. What's going on? Like, what is this? What is the act? What happens next?
Yes, absolutely. And so we had I think over 55 pharmacists come in from, don't quote me on this, 20, 21 states on really short notice for the reintroduction of the Pharmacists Fight Back Act. And we had pharmacists from cities, from small towns, from the East Coast, West Coast, the South, and they all sort of converged on DC on incredibly short notice for the reintroduction of Pharmacists Fight Back Act, because frankly, it's just that important. And so what we saw is, in 2024, the Pharmacists Fight Back Act was introduced, and really, I think, surprised a lot of people, right? Maybe it was a sleeper bill, but it got well over 50. I think it got around 56 to 58 co-sponsors in 2024. And it was reintroduced just last week as two separate bills. And so the first bill, HR 6609, was introduced by Congressman Auchincloss and Harshbarger, who obviously everybody knows Representative Harshbarger is a pharmacist as well. And so that's really important that she was willing to be a co-lead. That bill acts in Medicare and in Medicaid managed care plans. And then the second bill was introduced by Representatives Auchincloss and Comer is the chairman of oversight. That bill acts in the Federal Employee Health Benefits Program, and that bill will be assigned to the Oversight Committee. And cannot stress how unbelievable it is to have the chairman of the Committee of Jurisdiction willing to be a co-lead on Pharmacists Fight Back Act, right? I mean, from my perspective, it's just sends such a powerful message, and the import of this really can't be overstated. It is a really big deal. And both of these bills, there's some technical differences, but in broad strokes, here's what these bills do. They take away the ability of PBMs to essentially set, manipulate, and fix drug prices in these large federal healthcare programs. And these are big ones, right? Medicare Part D obviously is probably the biggest prescription drug program in the country. Federal Employee Health Benefits Program is the largest self-funded employer plan in the country. So these are massive federal programs along with Medicaid managed care. And so this is going to take away the ability of PBMs as government contractors to exploit and manipulate drug prices. And it moves to a market-based model using national average drug acquisition costs plus 4% up to $50, as well as a dispensing fee that's in line with state Medicaid fee-for-service dispensing fee. And so huge, right? No more PBM manipulating drug prices. It also ends patient steering to PBM-owned pharmacies, prohibits fees and clawbacks and pricing manipulations that way, and does another really powerful thing that's very much in line with what President Trump tried to do in his first term with the rebate rule in 2020. But it looks to reduce drug costs at the counter for patients in these federal plans by mandating that PBMs share all discounts and rebates, and that those are calculated into patient cost share. And so this is going to align drug prices, remove drug pricing variability, ensure that retail pharmacies that aren't affiliated with PBMs are reimbursed fairly, while also ending massive PBM markups at their own affiliated pharmacies, and then prohibit the self-interested steering.
All right, so
That's a lot.
we're going to drop your email address. If you're looking on your screen, you're going to see Greg's email address over at APCI. Reach out to Greg, ask him how to help. This is a collective. If we all help a little bit, this is going to go crazy. So this is the kind of those times as let's celebrate the holidays. Let's relax. I'm not done Christmas shopping. I don't think you are. Your internet and power, your internet went down. My power went down. It's disrupted this recording twice. I mean, there's fighting forces against us on multiple fronts. So even if you pray for PBM reform, at least you do something. But literally, reach out to your state representatives. If you're listening right now, invite them in the new year. Say, hey, listen, make a commitment in the first quarter of 2026 to invite a state representative to your pharmacy, your long-term care pharmacy, your specialty pharmacy, your community independently owned pharmacy, your Giant Eagle, your Publix. Invite your state representative to your operations and explain to them, because they do not understand your white coat. You count pills. That's all they're thinking about. No, show them your automation. Show them have them sign a non-disclosure form or whatever that form is that you can give tours. Make sure you do that as a lawyer, right, Greg?
That's it.
And then tour them through your pharmacy and tell the story. Here's what we do. You don't have to be super granular. Here's what we do as a pharmacy operation. Here's how that impacts patient health. Here are issues that can come up with medication management. Here are issues that can come up with billing and prior authorization, sticky tape that doesn't make any sense whatsoever other than just to deny the claim. Tell the story. And when the visualization comes to their minds, that kind of lights this on fire so that we can keep this going into 2026.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, Todd. Invite your U.S. representative for your state to the pharmacy, and at the state level, invite your state representative. What we have seen is so many pharmacy champions, legislators at the state level and federal level who visited pharmacies and spend 30 minutes, an hour, sometimes short as 15 minutes in a pharmacy, and walked out determined to help fight,
Exactly.
for pharmacy. And like that is how pharmacy champions are made. And so, right, if there is a secret sauce, it's getting legislators into your pharmacy, showing them what you do, showing them how you care for people, and showing them what your business and profession is up against by, self-interested, conflicted, large pharmacy benefit managers and, their unfair practices that they engage in. So absolutely.
All right. Well, we probably won't talk until after Santa comes, and I wish you a very Merry Christmas and a very happy time with your family. Get some rest. I am hypocritical in saying that because I love to work, so I'm sure that you're going to sneak an email in or two because it's just in our blood to do so. But I appreciate your friendship. I appreciate the support that you guys have given to us to get more news out and get more information out. You're invited back on TWIRx. You can TWIRx with me as much as you want, but I don't really want to watch you TWIRx, to tell you the truth, Greg.
That wouldn't be good for anybody, Todd. That wouldn't be good for anybody. But,
hey,
I appreciate being on.
We have a big show, so we have to go. We got to get things going, but I do want to read something to you. This is a quote. The Pharmacist Fight Back Act bill strengthens the entire healthcare system, said APCI CEO Tim Hammerich. And this is the part that gets me. When patients pay less and federal programs operate more efficiently, every taxpayer benefits. I hate taxes, Greg. I hate taxes. I hate them. And his philosophy and what Tim said is literally the truth. And then, by the way, that was a nonpartisan quote. That was like, it's a machine. It works just like computers, just like a program, just like a factory. If you abuse the system, you weaken the system, it weakens the entire nation. So this is really, to me, the reason why I put so much time and effort into our network and into our podcast is because I know that this is impacting people's lives based on us supporting you are the professional, you pharmacist and you pharmacy operator and you PBM builder, these brand new PBMs that are being built that are going to be the future of how PBMs run, because the destruction of the grandpa system that was decrepit and built for only one reason, that's coming down finally, and we're building a brand new system, and it's actually leading more with pharmacists, because pharmacists will be doing less dispensing of an actual medication and really digging into disease state management.
Yeah, there's so much that pharmacists can be doing, but I'm glad you read that quote. I think, I think Tim absolutely center punched it. And the reality is, right now, big PBMs are using their position as government contractors, right? Who had the trust of the federal government, and they're using that position to overcharge federal beneficiaries, federal patients, including senior citizens, while at the same time under reimbursing non-affiliate retail pharmacies and then marking medications up at their pharmacies thousands and thousands of %. And this is going to reduce costs and lead to increased efficiencies, improved access to care, and sustainability for pharmacies, all while saving taxpayers money. I'm glad you pointed out. I think Tim center punched it, and just can't thank you, Todd, enough for all the work you're doing and the attention you're bringing to the role pharmacists play just in the broader healthcare system. It's awesome.
Heck yeah. As much as we can get out there and reach people is the better. Hey, that's it. We got to get going. We got a big show today. Quick message from our sponsor, and we'll be right back with more TWIRx.
Running a pharmacy means juggling a lot. Patient care, inventory, and now compliance. That's where MatchRx comes in. MatchRx is an online marketplace where independent pharmacies buy and sell their overstock safely, quickly, and affordably. You can also shop from 11 plus trusted secondary wholesalers all in one place. We're here to make pharmacy ownership easier, connecting you to savings, trusted partners, and simple tools that help you stay compliant with confidence. MatchRx, where pharmacy meets trust, compliance, and opportunity. Visit MatchRx.com to learn more. That's MatchRx.com.
We're here on TWIRx This Week in Pharmacy. Got someone in the studio with me. I want to introduce Dr. Jessica Dae Lee to TWIRx.
Thanks, Todd. This is exciting. We had our first session just a few weeks ago, and now I've already been invited into the studio. I'm very excited.
Into the inner circle of the TWIRx land.
Absolutely.
So introduce yourself to the listeners, just in case people don't know who Jessica Dae Lee is.
Sure. So, hi, Jessica Dae Lee, pharmacist by training, but I've spent the majority of my career in the pharmacy supply chain. So not practicing with patients, but really focusing more on getting drugs to the patients that need them. So I've worked in the healthcare arena, responsibility for a large integrated delivery network, and then also for one of the largest acute GPOs, and ran the pharmacy program for them as well.
Yeah, that was Premier.
Premier. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember Premier when I was in my long-term care realm. And we worked with MHA, we worked with Premier, we worked with
Innovatics.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And it's making me now feel old, where I see companies merging, or I see major changes happening. The reason why that you're here today is exactly that. There's a lot of changes coming up in 2026. Just for everybody, today's TWIRx is Friday, December 19th. We have, what is that? 14 days before it's 2026. That's crazy.
It's crazy.
I don't know where 2025 went, but we were talking to Alec Ginsberg, known as the drugstore cowboy, and Antonio Chacha, who's the Jedi Master of PBM reform and analytics that are coming into that. We just had them on TWIRx last week, and they were talking about the changes to Medicare and the disruption to a list of medications that are going to potentially be major issues for some of our independent pharmacies because of the expense. Kind of dial in and talk to us about that from your perspective.
Sure. So I think what's really interesting about these Medicare changes, and I'm sure what you talked about with the guys last week, is really focused on the independent pharmacies, PBMs, and how those changes impact that segment of the pharmacy delivery network. What's really interesting about these Medicare changes is that they have the potential, especially in coupled with another change that is coming on January 1st with the 340B rebate pilot. Those two together have incredible potential to disrupt and change the way that pharmacy distribution and pharmacy administration happens across the entire supply chain. So yes, there's absolutely the impacts that you talked about last week, but where I focus is, how do these changes impact the way that health systems and distributors and GPOs and other stakeholders in the market make decisions? And how does that impact the long-term health and stability of the market, especially when we talk about generic drugs and biosimilars?
The government in different levels, obviously state, but federal, the federal government has really tried, and I applaud them for trying, but then every time one of our Antonio Chachas dissect the domino effect of what they're going to do, TrumpRx, for example, number one, he had to name it after himself.
Of course.
He's got his Trump watches and everything. And I just think that's, I guess, silly, my libertarian viewpoint. But every time they try something, it's never, some of the PBM reform things that they're bringing to attention, I think is wonderful. But why doesn't it feel like it ever really hits the spot? It's
right.
Almost like you just missed it by, this side or this side. Like, talk to us a little bit about that too.
Yeah, I think the problem with our healthcare system in the United States is that it is just so complex that every little tweak that is made, it ripples in unintended consequences. So something that seems like it's it makes sense, it's an easy fix, it's something that will bring value to the market, inevitably it's going to, and I used this phrase recently and got someone to chuckle, right? It's going to move someone's cheese, right? Some stakeholder in the market is going to have to change the way that they approach their business practices to respond to those changes. And, I think I can certainly sit here and talk more about the supply chain focus and how the pharmaceutical industry and distribution and GPOs play a role in the market. the gentleman that you had on before, Antonio, right? Their focus is in independent pharmacies and retail pharmacies and PBMs. Collectively, this market is so complex with so many different facets that it's nearly impossible for any one person to understand in great detail and workable detail every aspect of the market. So a change that makes sense to one individual, myself or right, or you, may not make sense in a different part of the market. And it's really hard to have the foresight and forethought to make those changes and make adjustments that are not going to have unintended consequences. I think that's one of the challenges, and we see that, and we have seen that over and over with government intervention into healthcare. Something sounds great, we make a change, but the ripple effect and how that impacts the market in totality is very different. And a lot of these changes, I like to say they're Band-Aids, right? It's Band-Aids on top of Band-Aids on top of Band-Aids. When we are making these changes to address a specific issue, more than likely, we're not actually addressing the underlying issue that is creating the problem, right? We're not necessarily truly addressing the market forces that are incentivizing the market to behave the way that it does. We're making a slight tweak, but without fixing that underlying problem, the underlying dysfunction in the healthcare delivery market, you're not going to see those kind of magic bullets, the magic change that will make things better. It's just going to create a new set of challenges that we'll have to Band-Aid over later.
It creates a lot of mystery and not understanding what's going on. If I'm a pharmacy owner and I'm worried about my clients, I'm worried about my patients, I'm trying to grow in my market, I have a Rite Aid in my community that just shut down. Nickman's Drugs took it over, which is wonderful, independent community pharmacy. That level, I'm like, do they really understand what's going on? It's hard to understand. It's hard to track. How do we get this information out, and how do we get a playbook out to our independent community pharmacists, pharmacies, the chain pharmacies? Shout out to Giant Eagle right here in our backyard in Pittsburgh. How do we get the right information to them? I keep thinking of people like you working with the buying groups or working with the state associations or doing something to help the operators understand how they should be pivoting.
Right. I think a lot of it is just, we focus every 2 years as a pharmacist on getting our continuing education credits. And most of those CE credits are really founded in clinical knowledge and clinical application. These business topics, how you run your business, the changes that are coming from federal regulation, state regulations, even competition with other stakeholders in your market. Those are all business questions. And so what's really important for independent pharmacies, and again, really anybody, me as a pharmacist with a focus in supply chain, I only get better, I only get closer to having a more comprehensive understanding of how healthcare in the United States works if I continue to expand my knowledge. May not be through CE credits and clinical topics, right, but it's things like listening to podcasts like the TWIRx podcast. It's listening to and meeting other experts in the market that can teach you a little bit about a different aspects, a different aspect of pharmacy, a different aspect of the business implications. And I think that's how we get better. No one really has a lot of time, and certainly independent pharmacies and even chain pharmacies, pharmacists don't have a lot of time. But even setting aside a few minutes a week just to learn a little bit about a different part of the business of pharmacy can really help to kind of grow that base of knowledge and grow an understanding of how all of these different changes can impact your business.
And it's knowing who to trust, what they're talking about, what kind of experience they have to be able to say what they're saying, and then connect that. That's why I love the podcast that we've gathered, about 40 in the network. There's one called PBM Reform. APCI, who's a large buying group, has 2,000 something members. Greg Rybold's a lawyer for them. He's government relations. We met him last week at the Pharmacists Fight Back gathering in Washington, D.C. It's those kinds of organizations that I want to get you connected with, because they know things, because they're having to collect, they're having to source, they're having to go out and try to pay attention to what's going on. Talk to us about what you do for organizations and how they might connect into what you're doing to give them a different level of vision.
Sure. So I think you started this with the thought around who do you trust, right? It can be hard to weed through the information that you're gathering, because every segment, every person, right, they're going to have, it sounds a little negative to say this, but everyone has an agenda, right?
Mhm.
They've got an agenda built on their knowledge, on their understanding, on their goals, and what they're trying to accomplish. I think what's unique, especially with where I'm at right now, I'm an independent consultant, so I am not tied to any one employer where I have to toe the line and really parrot what they need me to parrot. So the way that I approach the market is maybe radical transparency on what I know and how the supply chain works. What are our manufacturers? What decision points are they facing? The GPOs, the wholesalers, all of these different stakeholders are businesses trying to make it through what we know as U.S. healthcare delivery. And there are important aspects of how they function, how those businesses function, the decisions they need to make, the goals that they need to achieve, that they may be in alignment with each other and they may be in conflict with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So what I bring to the table is really that sort of an unusual understanding from a pharmacy perspective. So we didn't talk about it before, but at the beginning of my career, I actually started with a pharmaceutical manufacturer on the commercial side of the business. So I bring a very different focus around how the commercial pharmaceutical market works, the decisions that are made, how they do what they do, and then how that feeds into the distribution of drugs. So where they're being purchased. The crazy thing about our distribution world is that there's no simple, here's your price and this is the price you're going to pay and everybody's going to pay this price, right? There's a lot of different levers that you have to be able to exercise to get the best deal in the market. So how do you leverage that? How do you address your contracts? How do you approach gaining new business and gaining new clients and customers so that you can grow your footprint as, and whoever you are, whether it's in the distribution side of the market or whether it's another stakeholder that has to interact with the distribution market? How do we make that more favorable and allow you to be successful as you engage with all of these different stakeholders that have very specific needs and business objectives that they're trying to meet that may or may not be in alignment with yours?
Yeah, the new models that are sprouting, I'm seeing manufacturers increase direct access to pharmacies, bypassing PBMs, bypassing the buying groups. That's making a lot of people nervous. Then I see the models, a shout out to Dr. Kyle McCormick right here in Pittsburgh, Blueberry Pharmacy, for saying, hell with it. I'm doing direct to my consumer, to my patient. They're going to pay a small club member fee for the MTM side of things. And then it's going to be cost plus over, very transparent. I love that model. And then those are sprouting up across the country. There's more and more of them. We're going to see more and more of them happening in 2026, going back to the old fashioned way of whatever that was, 70s or 80s, where they just paid the pharmacy for their meds and for the consultation, and it was all baked in. But realism brings me back to the status quo, and that is for 2026, if you were to give a shout out to our listeners, pharmacy owners, buying groups, maybe even a politician, what is the check and balance list of you saying, hey, listen, in a world that is pretty confusing in our healthcare system, you advise them to go here, here, and here to just double check things. And that sounds like a lot of work. They should just reach out to you and ask you to help. But talk to us about maybe 3 points or advice points of here's the information you should be double checking to assure that your access, your buying is not whack.
Well,
Uh-oh.
in more ways than one. You don't want to buy at whack.
Yeah.
So
It is whack is whack.
Whack is whack. Absolutely. I think there's a couple of things that, as a pharmacist leading a pharmacy, that you need to do routinely, whether it's because it's 2026 and you're refreshing your view, or it's just any year. 2026 is particularly interesting. We talked about the Medicare price changes, the 340B rebate program pilot they're both going into effect on January 1st. So major shift in the way the market is going to be managed. Now focusing primarily, again, in that Medicare Part D space for right now, 340B, but it's going to shift the way that a lot of the market interacts. So your PBM agreements, the agreements that you have with your health plans, with your PBMs, you have to watch those, because those are all going to change as we see some of the list price reductions. We're going to see reductions in margin and payments for administration and distribution of those products that are impacted by these rule changes in January. So if you're not watching your PBM contracts, making sure that you are tracking, that's going to be a challenge. Now, that's not my area of expertise, so I encourage you to go somewhere else to really dig into those contracts. But if you're looking at your distribution agreements, this is another space where you really need to be well aware of what these changes mean and how that could impact your ability to purchase drugs, right? The majority of drugs in this country are all purchased through our big three wholesale distributors. Yep. They are shipping and distributing almost every product that a patient is going to receive here in the United States. Your agreement as a pharmacy owner with that distributor is based on the mix of drugs that you're purchasing and the profitability of those drugs and the distribution of those drugs to your distributor. Mm-hmm. So as we see some of these changes happening January 1st, that is absolutely going to impact the profitability for the distributor for those products. So the terms of your distribution agreement, you have to watch them very closely to make sure that you don't see any changes in your cost minus discounts or in the products that you're able to cover. We see things happening, especially as if you're getting ready to review your distribution agreement with your primary wholesaler. You really want to go through, there's important terms and conditions that we've seen changes have been proposed from distributors. Unless you know what you're looking for, you may not realize that some of your terms, your shipping terms, your COGS terms, even your returns terms could be changing. And that's really important. As we see some of these list prices dropping, your terms for return very much could change, because the distributor is not going to want to accept returns at a higher cost and then resell those products at the new lower acquisition costs. So there's a lot of things that you need to watch when you're looking at your contracts, making sure that the terms are consistent, that you're getting the best value, and that if you do have an opportunity to renegotiate your distribution contracts, you're looking for those areas where you can push to get a little bit more favorable treatment from your distributor. The other thing that you really can be looking at is how you're purchasing. This feeds into so many different aspects of the way that you manage your business. So whether it's how much product you're purchasing, what your turns look like, do you have inventory data that is in a perpetual inventory system that's easily accessible? Are you purchasing everything that you can through your primary distributor, or are you leveraging the terms of that distribution agreement and other secondary channels for purchasing to get the best deal and make the most value out of your purchasing strategy? It's not always easy to manage, because typically, right, a lot of this has been manual lift. There's a buyer sitting in a terminal that's purchasing products based on the way they've always done it. There's ways, though, that you can refresh your purchasing strategy, refresh your inventory strategy, so that you are buying the right products through the right channel to maximize the financial value of all of your distribution contracts, but at the same time taking into account some of the challenges that are pervasive in the country right now with drug shortages, right? Do you have the right strategy for your critical products to make sure that you are well positioned to weather any future disruptions that may happen, and to make sure that your purchasing patterns and your strategies are not actually contributing to the problem of drug shortages. So there's a lot of different ways that you can look at, again, any of your existing agreements or contracts and how some of these, especially the January 1st changes, could impact them, but then looking at your purchasing strategy overall. Where are you buying from? How do you tweak your purchasing strategy to make sure that you're getting the best value and future-proofing your supply chain?
Jessica, have you helped organizations like pharmacies, large pharmacies, chains, negotiate contracts?
So it's a big part of the work that I did. I mentioned I'd worked for a health system, so I was right here at UPMC, where I ran the pharmacy supply chain, and a big part of our daily work was managing the negotiation of contracts. And so we did everything from negotiating the massive distribution contracts to individual manufacturer contracts, and sort of the local impact. Same thing with my time at Premier, negotiating and leading the team that did negotiations for all of the GPO contracts. I have not gone in personally to help independent pharmacies negotiate these contracts, but the terms and conditions and really the detail that we got into from a GPO and from a major health system level are it's very granular. And so that the concepts that the distributors are using in writing terms and conditions for larger entities, it's very similar to the concepts and the terms that they're looking to insert into some of these other independent pharmacy contracts as well. So it's very easy to port those ideas, look for those terms and conditions. And again, what we did was true supply chain, RFP, multiple vendors, right? And the rigor around running a process like that is very much portable over to any pharmacy setting. And so that's something that I can do, absolutely have done for others.
I think of we've worked with KeySource, Real Value, Value Drug, GeriMed, all these organizations that are MHA who are positioned to concentrate on pharmacy outlets, pharmacies, and then start to divide out a very specific section. When we're working we go to Assembia and working in specialty versus going to the ASCP and working just in long-term care. Is there anything that is going to impact long-term care pharmacies coming up January 1st? I know that there's a list of drugs that Alec Ginsberg and Antonio Chacha talked about, but is there bigger things that could kind of slide out of the changes that are happening to long-term care pharmacy specifically?
Sure. So I think as I mentioned earlier, these changes, although we are focusing on them for Medicare Part D, for those 10 drugs where we're going to see the maximum fair prices that are implementing January 1st, what we've seen as a part of that process is that many of the manufacturers that are subject to these MFPs have started to think about reducing their list price, right? So list price or WAC price, they're looking to bring it a little closer to where their net price is going to be. So we've seen some of those shifts. So whether you're purchasing the product through or reimbursing through a Medicare Part D plan, which could happen, ultimately that decrease in list price will make a difference for pharmacies and settings across the country. So whether it's long-term care or retail or hospital pharmacy, there will be a change in list price. We're going to see more of an impact over the next coming years. So this first group of drugs, we're going to see what happens come January 1st, and over the next year, January 1st of 2027, we see the next group, and those were announced just before Thanksgiving, 15 drugs that will be included in that next round. And then going forward from there, the program is going to expand to include more Part B and Part D drugs. So we focus very much on Part D right now, but the program will continue to expand. So we'll see more of those Part B drugs that will have broader impact in pharmacy settings or in inpatient or long-term care settings, that will come. And so we'll see over the next couple of years what changes result from these first price decreases and how that impacts the market overall.
All right. So a shout out to organizations that are out there. You're listening right now. You want an opportunity to talk with Jessica. I'm going to have a link into Jessica's LinkedIn. Also, it's called Dae Lee Consulting Services, LLC. That's your consultancy. Any big plans for the holidays? I mean, it's December 19th. So what, it's 5 more days till Christmas, right?
Yeah, the holidays are always busy. So fortunately, right, Pittsburgh based, just like you are, and most of our family is here also, but we do like to sneak out a little bit and take a quick trip down to Florida to get a little bit of sun before Santa shows up. So we'll be leaving tonight, heading down there for a little bit, and won't tan very much, but that's okay.
Yeah.
And then come back Christmas and then head up north to ski. So we like to go extremes when we get near the holidays.
We have to promise to come back to TWIRx. Let's either you come down to the studio, we'd love to have you, or just pipe you in from your North Hills offices up there. But it's just been so good to reconnect with you. We originally got to meet at the SureCost event. A shout out to SureCost and Insights. It's been wonderful to re-engage and work with them. I worked with them originally way back in my Framework LTC days, and we built an API to their system. And now with the advent of leveraging more of artificial intelligence through their analytics company, it's crazy what they're doing. I love it.
No, their model is very exciting to me as a supply chain nerd.
Yeah.
Because as I mentioned earlier, one of the big things that pharmacies can do is get strategic with their purchasing and how and where they buy their drugs from, because it makes a difference. You can maximize your prime vendor. You can bring in secondary vendors to help build value and build access. And that's what's so beautiful about the SureCost product is they really started as a tool to help long-term care and retail pharmacies do that better, make smarter decisions, and automate some of their purchasing process so that they could standardize. And what they've built now is getting farther into my area of interest, which is around drug shortages and leveraging AI to build out some of these really unique capabilities. So that's definitely, you ever want to talk about supply chain, drug shortages, any of these components, that's where I really get excited.
Yeah. Well, we'll have you back for that. I think this is good education, good business education for our listeners. A shout out to our listeners. Hope you guys are doing well. Wishing everyone a very, very Merry Christmas. And Jessica, Dr. Jessica Dae Lee, make sure that you come back to TWIRx.
Happy to. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. We'll be right back for more TWIRx.
Feeling lost with the complexities of pharmacy accounting?
In pharmacy today, there's so many different variables and issues that impact the pharmacy books, records, accounting, the profitability of the store, so forth. There's different components of pharmacy that have its own nuances from an accounting standpoint. And so it's tricky. There's no doubt about it.
Ready to take your pharmacy to the next level but don't know where to start? Sykes & Company is here to help. Introducing the RX Assessment. With the RX Assessment, the pharmacy CPAs and advisors at Sykes will do a deep dive into your accounting and tax situation and give you the action steps you need to take your pharmacy to the next level.
If you're interested in, working with a team who understands the industry and how the accounting and tax should really be in a pharmacy, this is your chance to get a under the hood check of what's going on and getting the feedback of any issues or concerns or, again, things we think you're doing really well with.
Get the financial checkup your pharmacy needs and head over to sykes-cpa.com or call 252-482-7644.
Hey, welcome back to TWIRx. What a good week it has been. December 19th, 2025. I hope you're ready for Christmas. I am a hypocrite because I am not ready yet. I always wait to the last minute. I'm a last minute shopper. I have my kids picked out. I even have something for my wife God bless her heart. But I'm just not ready. I think 2025 has been a surprise. Everything snuck up on me. The conference season just kind of wrecks everything. And now it's time to just chill out with family. And I have to I got to turn things off from a professional perspective. I'm not sure if you feel that way, but I want to take time just to be with the family. And so this week coming up, we're going to work until December 23rd. We're not going to have a TWIRx the week of Christmas. So just an announcement to let you know what an amazing episode that we had with Johny Kello and the MatchRx team. Thank you so much to MatchRx and Dr. Dae Lee, Pharm.D, Esquire, pharmacist, and he calls himself the pharmacist lawyer, which is great. So much appreciate you. Before we get into our next segment, I have a special friend, a Pharmacy 50 award winner, somebody who's standing out, somebody who's international throughout the world and is really making a huge difference to the profession of pharmacy. Katrina Azur, I want to welcome you to TWIRx.
Todd Eury, my great friends, thank you so much for inviting me on this show. I am so excited about this episode, and I am thrilled to be here and to feature on TWIRx this week. Like you, I'm not really that ready for Christmas either. I've been deep in the trenches launching my book, and I couldn't launch it at a better time. I'm not heavily promoting it at the moment because I know people are really busy, but once I get into January, I'm going to go all in on heavy promotion of the book, which is something that I'm really looking forward to.
If you're watching us on LinkedIn, if you're watching us streaming on YouTube or even Twitter, you'll see on the screen, it says Unscripted on Purpose. This is a book that Katrina has been thinking about and working on for nearly 3 years, and really started heavy about 6 months ago. I've been tracking Katrina's work. I'm so honored to be mentioned in the book. I love the fact that she cultivates a whole bunch of people that she's consulted with. This isn't like a book that came out on an island, but it's the journey and purpose.
It kind of did, Todd. We are an island.
We're an island. We're an island of pharmacist misfits. But tell us about the whole purpose and where your heart was when you thought of Unscripted on Purpose.
So Unscripted on Purpose, as it is called, a journey and purpose-driven guide for pharmacists who feel called to more, is really every pharmacist's gateway to finding their identity beyond the script that is handed to them by society, by their parents, by the profession, by universities, just to find themselves beyond that. What is my purpose in life? Why am I here for? What am I called to do? And no matter what stage a pharmacist is at, I am 100% certain that at every point in their life, no matter how successful, they've had a brick wall when they've asked themselves, is this it? Is this really what life is about? Even you might have got to that point. There are moments of pause when you just think, oh my gosh, like, what is this? What am I doing? Why am I even here? We've had those moments specifically on our rides back from work, on Sunday evening when we have a lot of I hate Monday energy. So the book is really aimed at pharmacists from all stages of their career. No matter how successful and no matter how burned out you are or misaligned, you're going to find yourself in the stories, because it is coming from someone or from me, from my journey. And I pretty much just hand your story back to you through my words. You're going to see yourselves seen and heard through the stories that I share from my career, from starting at rock bottom, a failing pharmacist who's made mistakes that nearly killed some patients, to a pharmacist who's stood on the top of the mountain, got all the awards and recognitions that I possibly get my hands on and all the credentials, just to realize I'm still not happy. I'm still feeling hollow. Is this really what life has come to? Because if all of these things are meant to fulfill me, if money is it, well, it hasn't. So then I decide to go back down the mountain and had a little existential crisis back in June this year when I stepped away from everything. And I thought, you know what, God, if you want me to write this book, you need to send me the answer, because I have no idea. I have no idea why I'm here. Like, I thought this was it. I thought I chased the right purpose to get to the top of the mountain, but I still feel really hollow. Helped me to continue the story, and it was then that I just went on a journey of self-discovery. And you followed along some of the journey. You've even told me that you're finding myself through the stories that I've been sharing. So it's really hard to just find yourself in the pools amidst it all and find your real identity beyond just a pharmacist. And interestingly enough, someone shared a paper with me, which I'm happy to link to in the episode, which was published by ACCP or journals, that looked at pharmacists who are happy with the profession but are feeling lacking, feeling unfulfilled, feeling lacking purpose. And I think, sadly, the article doesn't address finding yourself beyond the profession. I think we get so entangled and clustered and box ourselves in pharmacy that we just fail to see we have an identity, and there's a human being who, cherishes and finds joy in connection and travel and creativity. You'd know me, I'm a creative person. I dance, I write, I do all of these things, and I think it is these things that actually make me a better pharmacist, more effective at my role, not the other way around. And in weaving that story, I talk about my career and the height of the successes I've achieved, and I weave your story in, Todd, with the Pharmacy Podcast Network and the amazing contribution that the network has provided me in gaining exposure and connections to not just being this little pharmacist on a little island called New Zealand, which, by the way, is not Australia. We're not Australia. And getting exposure through the network and through my podcast and making me reach international audience. And this is pretty much how one of the dimensions of my career that has allowed me to grow and flourish on social media is just the exposure that the network has provided me with in that time, and the amazing connections I've gained just through being on the network, and for your amazing support. So yeah, you get a mention in chapter 12, page 149, and also in the acknowledgement section, because honestly, the work of the network is really underestimated, and I think every pharmacist should collaborate with Todd to get their voice out there, because each and every person, every pharmacist on the platform has a journey, and it's through sharing our journeys, that through showing up, that we become better versions of ourselves, because our life is not about us alone, it's about other people. And I feel like when I've shared my journey online, this is really what made me find you, and you found me, and we've increased exposure to the content. We need more journeys, we need more stories in pharmacy, and all that you've provided me with is just allowing me to increase exposure to my story. So that's also something that I talk about in the book as well. So yeah, that's what the book is about.
There is a quote from Frederick Nietzsche, or how do you say his name?
Yes, Nietzsche. He's a
Nietzsche. Yeah. And it says, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." And I absolutely love that quote. And I love the fact that you are so down to earth. There's no preconceivedness about you. You don't have an ego where you feel like you're better than people. I remember when you won the Pharmacy 50 most influential people in the pharmacy industry, which was amazing because you're international. You're not just in the United States. And I know our network concentrates more on content that comes from the United States. About 82% of our content is coming from the United States. But for someone to be in New Zealand and have an impact on a world stage, but you still I still don't think you recognize the impact that you've had on the profession, because that's not the way you see yourself. You see yourself as a servant leader and someone that has to continue to move and continue to kind of work and do what you do, and you're mission based. But Katrina, you have had a significant impact on the profession already, and people have recognized that. I think that's the reason that they brought your name to the platform of the Pharmacy 50 last year. And now this Unscripted on Purpose is kind of like I see this as a gift from you to the profession of saying, time out, people. You know, you guys are human beings, you're mothers, you've suffered divorce, you've suffered relationships, you've suffered, you know, growth and good times and bad times. And where are you at and what do you want to do? And just because you're a pharmacist or just because you're a technician or just because you're an administrator of some large hospital system pharmacy, that doesn't define you. And so I want everybody to look up Unscripted on Purpose. It's available on Amazon right now. I've ordered the copy. I can't wait to get it and read it. But I'm very proud of you, and I'm proud that you are a servant leader. You're not looking for fame. You're not looking for, you know, all this clicks and bits. And I can just tell by your personality, because every time you get involved in a project, you covered the FIP event in 2025, and every time you're there, it's all about, you know, what you can do to support the profession. And I think coming at the profession that way is the way that pharmacists think anyway. It's the way pharmacists want to save people's lives, to keep them from overdosing or doing something, interchange drugs to drug or whatever, drug allergy or whatever. But the attitude that you have has been immensely meaningful to me, because you practice what you preach.
Todd, these are just amazing words that are almost bringing me to tears. So I don't have much in response, apart from I honestly couldn't have done it with the support of everyone who has engaged, liked, commented, done anything to do with me in the last, 2 to 3 years. Your exposure has been paramount. The way that you've supported me, I owe the Pharmacy Podcast Network a lot. And most of all, I owe it to Jesus, to God, because, when I wrote this book, I was like, I just want this to get into the hands of people who really, really need it, who are not thriving, just surviving, who are existing instead of living, who just can't find themselves beyond pharmacy. And the reason I say it's so important is because if you find yourself beyond pharmacy, you're going to be a much more effective pharmacist. I guarantee it 100%. There is so much power in pharmacy. There's so much power in this profession. And I think when we find ourselves beyond our professional titles, our jobs, we become better versions who can better support this profession. We can be even more united. The reason pharmacy is so fractured is because we are finding ourselves too much in the profession, that we become so fragmented, because this becomes our only purpose. But if we have a life outside the profession, we become more cohesive. We find ourselves as the human beings. We support each other more. And that's really the tangent that I've always approached life from, especially in the last 6 months when I've had the awakening that really led to this book. So yes, I do show up with my full being, with my chaos and dancing and crazy things that I do, but I think that makes me who I am, and I think authenticity, just like you, Todd, is what really attracts people to you. And I think we need more authentic voices in pharmacy, and I have no doubt that you do great work in that space, and the Pharmacy Podcast Network really elevates the voices of authentic leaders in pharmacy. So I owe much gratitude to all the work that you're doing as well.
I didn't get the chance to ask you this. I'll ask you publicly to put you on the spot, make you a little bit nervous, but what was it like to travel internationally by yourself? And here's the reason why I've asked that. I have never, ever traveled one time anywhere internationally, like by myself. Like when I went to Cuba and when I went to Haiti, I was with the Coast Guard way back when I was like 19 or 20 years old or something like that. But other than that, I've never traveled abroad or to another country by myself. What was that like when you did that this summer?
I think you're going to think I'm really, really weird, and not that you don't think that already. I know I've come to terms with embracing weird, as you know. So I'm very comfortable with that, but I honestly think I didn't even feel scared. Like, I always think, even when I left the past version of me as a community pharmacist, which, by the way, I'm returning to as well, very, very shortly, for a few hours a week, but I've always had the mindset that what is the worst that could happen? Like, am I going to get kidnapped? Maybe. Like, I mean, they will regret it.
Yeah. They would. Be like a ninja. It'd be like trying to capture a ninja.
Exactly. Like they have no idea what I'm made of. So, but I just think fear has never been something that stopped me, Todd, only because when I do the thing that I'm going to do, I always think, what is the worst that could happen here? Like when I left my role with that no backups, and I talk about that in the book, it's like, I'm not gonna fall apart. I'll just return back to whatever it is. Oh yeah, there are some situations you think, well, yeah, there is potential for kidnap, obviously. But I think we overestimate risk in our lives, and I have a whole chapter on that in our book, because honestly, Todd, one of the biggest things, or in fact, the biggest thing in your life is how you think people will view you when you fail. Yep. And the narratives we talk about in our minds. Mm-hmm. So when I traveled, I was scared. I'm not going to deny that. I was like, oh my gosh, what if I do this? What if this happens? What if I get kidnapped? But what are the chances of these things happening? I mean, yeah, they are there, but 1%. But should they be the reason that you don't live your life? This is often the reason that stops us from pursuing so many things, is that we think, what if it fails? But what if it does succeed? What if that trip becomes the thing that healed me? And it did. So yes, it was scary, but I'm going to say this. Every pharmacist listening needs to travel alone and just enjoy their life. This could be the one thing in your career that completely, not just your career, your life, that can completely transforms you. I know you have a family. I had kids that I had to leave behind and everything, but honestly, 3 weeks away from your family, just doing something on your own, traveling, the world is not going to end. It didn't end in my case. So I highly recommend it. Yes, it was scary. Best experience ever. And as you can see, it allowed me to publish the book, because honestly, I started writing it before traveling, and I was like, God, I really can't do it. Like, I can't sit down. I can't get the words out. My brain has just stopped functioning. I'm burnt out. I got burnt out working for myself. So there you go. Just for those people like you who work for themselves, you can't actually burn yourself out working for yourself too. So even that is not the answer. For all those people, glorifying entrepreneurship, it's amazing that you get to work for your own. I couldn't have traveled if I didn't work for my own, but you can burn yourself out, work for your own. So it speaks to the fact that having a purpose, being intentional in your steps is so important, and taking time out to build the human in you before anything else. If you're a grounded human, nothing, and I mean nothing, is going to stand in your way.
I love it. All right, listeners, if you are driving, if you're jogging, do not worry about it. There's going to be a link in the show notes. If you went to Katrina Azer, A-Z-E-R, KatrinaAzer.com, go to her book section. It's Unscripted on Purpose is the book. Katrina, congratulations. So proud of what you've done. So proud of your impact on the world and of our profession. And I'm so just blown away. I love calling you a friend. I appreciate you. Merry Christmas, by the way. I said at the beginning of the show, I'm not ready for Christmas. Are you ready?
I haven't got a single present under the Christmas tree, and I've got two teens, and well, they are very, very difficult to buy for. I got myself socks, and I've wrapped them because I've been the reason is I've been shuffling, and I glide through the house, and I'm wearing out socks like there's no tomorrow. So if you wanted to give me presents for Christmas, feel free to send socks my way.
Socks for Katrina. All right, well, we'll be right back.
Thank you so much.
Hang on. We'll be right back with more TWIRx. I'll talk to you soon, Katrina.
Thank you, Todd. Pleasure